Hello and welcome to PBS North's Forum in the Northland with the candidates running to be Duluth's mayor for the next 4 years. I'm Kelsey Roseth and I'll be the moderator for tonight's forum, which is also being simulcast on our partner radio station, the North 103.3 FM. Tonight's one-hour forum is the final opportunity for Duluth residents to see and hear from the candidates before the election. We welcome incumbent Mayor Emily Larson, who is running for re-election. Welcome.
Thank you.
And former State Senator Roger Reinert is the challenger in the Duluth mayor's race. Welcome to you as well.
Thank you.
We appreciate both of your participation in tonight's
Absolutely.
event, truly. Before we begin, here are the ground rules for our forum. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening and closing statement. The majority of the program will consist of questions chosen by the PBS North editorial staff and some submitted by our viewers on social media channels. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer the question, with a 30-second rebuttal allowed for the candidate who answers first. We will alternate which candidate answers a question first throughout the forum. Earlier tonight, we flipped a coin to see who would begin with opening statements. We will hear first from Mayor Emily Larson. Mayor Larson, your opening statement.
Thank you. I'm Emily Larson, and I'm honored to be your mayor. I moved to Duluth at the age of 17 to go to Scholastica, and I stayed. I live in the hillside with my husband of 24 years. We're in the same house where we raised our 2 sons who are now grown. I've been mayor for 2 terms, and I'm seeking re-election because the progress we've made together is worth fighting for and expanding. We have taken on major issues one by one and delivered for Duluth in important transformative ways. We've increased streets work 850%, going from 2 miles a year when I took office to 17 miles this year, 20 next year, 50 in the next 3. We've cut the city's greenhouse gas emissions by 32%. Citywide crime is down 22%. We've added 1,700 new units of housing, more than has been done in the same time period in 3 decades. We are in our 4th straight year of record private sector investment, and together we navigated a global pandemic. I've talked with thousands of you, and I know many of us are hurting and struggling and worrying. We have serious issues that concern us as a community, and there is so much that we share. We all want our kids to thrive. We want reliable city services and a strong economy. We want meaningful work and a sense of collective purpose and connection. And although we may differ on individual issues, we all want what's best for ourselves and our neighbors. We need to meet our struggles now, and we also need a clear vision and path for how we move forward. And here, my opponent and I have very different visions and approaches to building our community. Over the next hour, I hope to make these differences clear, to hold each of us accountable for our records in office and our vision for moving forward. And thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Larson. And Mr. Reinert, let's start with your opening statement as well.
All right, thank you. Hello, Northland. My name is Roger Reinert, and I'm running for mayor because, like many of you, I'm simply ready for something different. It's time we expect more and do better with our core city services like streets, utilities, and public safety. Our neighborhood parks and community centers, engaging our residents. And I'm also running because we haven't had a meaningful race for mayor since 2007. In fact, 4 years ago, 2/3 of Duluthians didn't even vote. That's not healthy for Duluth or for democracy. City government cannot nor should it do everything. Our role is to be a good partner, to do the hard work of paying attention to the basics, effective, efficient, and at a tax rate we can afford and sustain. When done right, this doesn't even make the news. It just works. And it's the foundation that allows our residents to succeed, our businesses to grow, and our neighborhoods to thrive. Duluth, right now, we're sort of good, and we should be exceptional. Our unique neighborhoods, abundant outdoor spaces, the big lake, and of course, our people. In the last census, we grew by 400 residents, 1/2%, while all other regional centers grew by 10%. That's not growth, it's stagnation. In thousands of conversations, you've told me you are ready for something different, that you want a mayor and administration that cares about the things you care about: housing across all income levels, growing our commercial tax base, streets, downtown Duluth, and affordable property taxes. And not just because it's campaign season. There are practical and tangible steps the next mayor and administration can take in each of these areas, and it's time we do. No magic wands or wishful thinking required. Just focus, priorities, good communication, and hard work. This is our 13th or maybe 14th and final debate. That's a direct result of the first meaningful election in 16 years, and I look forward to tonight's conversation. Thank you.
Mr. Reinert, thank you so much. And we'll start tonight with you and talk about housing. So we know there's a lack of affordable housing in Duluth. So how can the city alleviate that problem?
Sure. I mean, the most critical issue with housing is that the market is stuck in the middle. We need housing across all income levels. And I love to share the story, and I shared it early in a conversation that the mayor and I were a part of a friend of mine who tried and tried and tried to buy a home. Single mom with a daughter, finally just gave up, and so continues to rent. If she could buy the home she wants, that apartment would open up. That apartment would be less expensive and or nicer. So that problem of us not having inventory in the middle of the market is a serious one. And when we tear down about as many houses as we build so that we have a net addition to our housing market of some 36, I think, homes over a decade, that is a real challenge. And we know that that's reality because we see it in the numbers. While we grew by 400 residents, all of our surrounding communities grew from 7 to 10% because that's where the housing was available. So we really need to focus on housing in the middle of the market, even upper end housing, so that individuals can move through the housing profile. If we don't, we end up growing a larger, ever-growing pool of people who actually need more affordable housing. And when we look at that, the real place for the city to be involved is in infrastructure. So we look at $58 million in ARPA funds that the city received, and it was a great opportunity to invest those funds in streets, in utilities, in the infrastructure that builders can then build on and get homes to the market at a price that people can afford.
Wonderful, Mr. Reinert, thank you so much. And Mayor Larson, may I have your response to that?
Yes, thank you for the question. Housing is so important. Our community is safer and stronger and better when people have housing that they can afford, that feels safe and feels strong. As mayor, this is where having relationships, a track record, and deliverables really matters. I convened a housing task force, and from that came a series of recommendations. A $16 million housing trust fund, which we are using to help bridge a gap, be early money in or drive affordability. $19 million of our $58 million ARP funds went directly into subsidizing affordability. We have now a housing developer on staff who is housed in our economic and planning divisions. This is a top priority. What we need to do as a city is to continue to be absolutely tenacious. That's why the new proposal that we have adopted and accepted for Leicester, which identifies housing, is critical. Housing for seniors that will not just provide needed market that we need, but also open up housing for others who are looking to get into the market. And this notion, accuracy matters on these issues. This notion that my opponent just said that 30-some single-family houses were built in 10 years, actually not correct. In my 7 years, looking at the housing indicator report, 301 certificates of occupancy for single-family homes. So accuracy matters, as does the ability to use TIF well. My opponent opposed TIF up at Matterhorn and Harbor Highlands when those were the tools that could have been used to help accelerate housing in just the way that he demonstrated he'd like to do.
Thank you, Mayor Larson. And Mr. Reinert, would you care for a rebuttal?
Sure, of course. So accuracy does matter. 36 new single-family homes, as reported by the Star Tribune, as reported by KBJR News in Duluth, 389 built, 353 demolished. So we're adding, but we're also subtracting at the same time. And if we've truly had the largest housing boom in the last 30 years, Duluthians would know it. We wouldn't see the skyrocketing values that we see. We wouldn't see the struggle that people have to get into homes, and we wouldn't see the tax rates that are going along with it. So it's just not the reality.
Thank you, Mr. Reinert. And Mayor Larson, this question is for you next.
Okay.
It expands a little bit about what we were just talking about. So we understand with population growth being low, how do you prioritize growth of the community when there is already some housing that needs to be taken care of for the people who currently live here? I mean, as far as a philosophy goes, how do you handle that?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And we hear a lot about climate migration and people moving into this community. First of all, a couple of things. I do want to say that the Housing Trust Fund tool is incredibly important. In 2005, my opponent helped create a Housing Trust Fund tool. In 2007, he voted twice to abolish it. Having a record of investing in housing is one of the ways that we show consistency in meeting the housing needs of people moving forward. There is no question. So I have also been very clear as it relates to climate migration. We got to put our own oxygen mask on first, period. So part of what we need to do is, again, look at every opportunity that we have to build housing. And at the same time, people want to live here because of the quality of life. We've invested in parks, we've invested in trails. I have just announced a 10-year, 4-phase plan to invest $36 million into our parks citywide. And we have to be mindful that there are important issues like childcare and those workforce ancillary efforts, which my opponent is silent on, which our families need to not just afford the housing that they want and deserve, but to also meet the needs of their families, to be reliable employers and employees, and to be thriving as a family. So there's a lot of things we need to do to build our community, but one of the first things we need to do is celebrate every ounce of growth that we get. This tired old narrative that we're a bad place to do business or we're stagnant, who wants to come here and invest in that? People don't. The value and visions that we have are creating incredible economic opportunity. Yes, more work to do, but we're on the right path to get it done.
Thank you, Mayor Larson. And Mr. Reinert.
Sure, thank you. Well, I think, just for starters, if it's important to be honest and accurate, then it's important to also embrace the reality of where the situation is at. So again, we need to address the reality that the housing market is stuck in the middle. But we also need to address the reality that given the limited inventory we have right now, conversion to rental and conversion to VRBO has become a pretty significant issue. So when I sat with neighbors on Park Point, we had this conversation. When I sat with neighbors by UMD, we had this conversation. And maybe surprisingly to some Duluthians that are watching, when I sat with neighbors out in West Duluth, we had this conversation. Concern about neighborhoods that no longer have neighbors because of the conversion of our existing stock. And that might not be a problem if we had more stock on the market, but that's not the case. And I just want to circle back to this issue of what that's doing to availability and also to housing prices. So you look at a home that was listed in 2018 for $200,000, $199,900. That same home today is valued at $333,600, a 41% price increase in 5 years. And if anyone's tried to look in the last 5 years, you know that that's the reality. And it also inhibits people who might be looking for a different home, either to downsize or to grow up to one. So we have to address the inventory issue, and that is the key to them being able to welcome new residents.
Thank you. And Mayor Larson, do you have a rebuttal?
I do. Thank you so much. Couple of things. First of all, VRBOs are an important opportunity in this community for sure. We have a current cap on VRBOs. That is something I support for the very reason that we want to maintain neighborhoods and neighborhood quality. We also want to let the market economy have some navigation and some things that they can do. But in that whole question that was just asked about housing and how to increase housing and how to help grow this population, I did not hear practical or tangible steps. I heard a regurgitation of frustration and a lingering of grievance, and that is different than a vision and a plan.
Thank you, Mayor Larson. And Mr. Reinert, this next question will start with
Sure.
you. So as a follow-up to the housing discussion, let's discuss the unhoused population in Duluth. So what solutions do you offer to support people who are experiencing homelessness, and how do you get to the root cause?
Right. Well, an important question for our community, one that we tend to think of in just downtown, but that's not. It's not just a downtown issue. It's an issue that many neighborhoods are encountering. And first of all, when an individual is living on the street or living in a tent, that's not healthy for the individual, nor is it healthy for our community. And we want to do better by those individuals in our community. So there are several things that we can do. We can better connect to our existing resources. And we are a community that is blessed with many nonprofit as well as faith-based options. We want to continue to work with our outreach options, from the substance use recovery team to our Duluth Police and our Duluth Fire, to folks like Deb Holman who are out there on a daily basis. And then we also have to look at what are the intermediate steps to especially to help individuals who are struggling from opioid or fentanyl addiction, which we know really is driving up also related mental health issues. And so one of the things that both of us actually have talked about is the effectiveness of the San Marco project, which we both were involved with previous in our service careers. And I think that is an excellent model. It is safe, it is supportive, it is caring housing that provides both the opportunity for someone to reach for help if they're able to do that, but also a safe place to be if they're not able to do that.
Thank you for that. And Mayor Larson, your response.
Yes, thank you. And what I just heard was a restating of the problem, which is significant. And first of all, people who are living unsheltered, they are mothers and fathers and daughters and sons. And so we want to have a heart of compassion for them. Here's what we're doing right now. I was part of the group that helped advocate for $1 billion of affordable housing money to come from the state of Minnesota. As a board member of the Greater Minnesota Housing Fund, I am out there getting every dollar that we possibly can into housing projects here. We've expanded warming center hours, we've increased funding to our shelters, we've added storage facilities and funded hygiene for people. Most importantly, we want to work to move people into housing. And how we do that is we incentivize and we work on greater affordability. We're very focused on that, and I appreciate and understand how my team is working hard on that. We also need to go into encampments and work with people where they are at to help them move and advance into housing. We have a cross-department team that does that well, that works closely with CHUM, with the state, and with St. Louis County. And finally, we invest heavily into a community-based vision called Stepping On Up. It's a three-pronged plan that is led by CHUM and community partners, Affordable Housing Coalition, and many others. This is where we have to be moving with a heart of compassion, but also focus and tenacity with all of our resources. Because having people housed, it just makes life better. It makes classrooms safer and smarter. It makes everything work better in our life and in our community. And every single resident in this community absolutely deserves housing.
Thank you so much for that. And Mr.
Sure.
Reinert, your rebuttal.
Oh, of course. Well, clearly what we're doing isn't working or it isn't enough, or perhaps it's both. So for clarity, number one, we better connect to our existing resources, things that we already have, the things that we can potentially add some resources to reach individuals and do better in working with them. Number two, we work with the county and the state to have a new San Marco that works specifically with folks that are struggling with mental health and opioid or fentanyl addiction issues. And number three, we have to advocate at the state level for long-term mental health care so that jail and the ER bed is not the preferred option.
Thank you so much for that. And Mayor Larson, this question is for you next. We've heard from local contractors and developers in the community that the city can be challenging to work with. And we know with time that could lead to stunted development. And so what specific areas do you feel need to be improved?
Great. I'm so excited about this question. We are in our fourth straight record year of private investment in the city of Duluth. And 2 years ago, my State of the City address took on an economic development audit to ask for your ideas so that we could actually tackle and face this old, tired narrative that Duluth is a bad place to do business. The more your elected leader repeats that and says that, it permeates. And here's what we're doing. So we got this report back, 200 people participated. We had experts from around our community let us know what we need to do. We have a new economic development director named Chad Ronchetti who's doing an outstanding job already aligning up what we need to be doing there. We want to communicate more proactively with you. We're getting tools in place to do that. We're working on our permitting to speed that up, and we're getting really strong success. We've added a housing inspector into my next budget so that we can move through more of these units faster. And finally, we have to embed our values into everything that we do. When you get a public subsidy with the City of Duluth, you will use a project labor agreement which protects union workers, and you will sign a community benefit agreement, which is about making sure that people have a pathway to employment. So what we do as a city is we are an incredible place to do business, based not just on our expanding tax base, but on the amount of interest coming in. And we use our values as a way to move our whole community forward when every single one of those projects moves forward.
Thank you, Mayor Larson. And Mr. Reinert.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to talk about the 4 record years of investment. Page 50 of the city's 2023 budget book says this: construction permits have been higher due to the $1 billion Essentia construction project over the last few years. The number of permits is actually down 5% from 2019, but the fee charged per permit has increased, so permit revenue remains stable. So stable and slightly down is not the same as record-breaking, and the $1 billion Essentia project doesn't actually add to our local commercial tax base, as wonderful it is to have in our community. And to circle back to the tired narrative, I think it also is important for a leader to actually speak the truth about what's going on in our community. Perception is reality, and based on many, many conversations, reality is reality. I talked to an individual just last week who was going to do a 4-building project in Duluth, gave up after taking too many months, and ended up building that very same project in Hermantown. It is now open, it is now full, and it is contributing to the Hermantown commercial tax base instead of our commercial tax base. And the reason that that is so critical is commercial taxes pay most of the bill. So when we're not growing the commercial tax base, we're actually increasing the pressure on residential property taxes. And folks, you've seen that. You know what's happening with your own residential property tax bill. It takes more of that in order to make up where we're at. So let's be honest, let's confront the problem so that we can move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Reinert. And Mayor Larson, do you have a rebuttal?
Yes, I absolutely do. I am so proud of the work that we are doing in the economic development space. We have taken an $850,000 annual liability in a building at the air park and turned it in with Cirrus into a $15 million innovation center. That is an expansion of tax base. We got Costco in the city limit when it could have moved 1 block into Hermantown. That is an expanse of tax base. We have saved ST paper. That is an expanse of tax base. It all factors in together. But it starts by having a vision, by having the dedication, by having an energy that people want to meet, to invest, and to expand, and to grow their business.
Thank you, Mayor Larson. And Mr. Reinert, this next question is directed at you first. This question comes from viewers, by the way, Roderick and Jack, so thank you for submitting. The city continues to financially support entities including the Duluth Entertainment Convention Center, obviously known as DEC, Spirit Mountain, and other entities. And so we understand a couple of those have become profitable, but both viewers would like to know your stance. Do you think they should be sold, stand on their own, or continue to operate as is?
Sure. And I think a little bit of a civics lesson is in order that both the DEC and Spirit, which were specifically mentioned, are actually independent authorities. Now, the role that the mayor has is appointing all of the Spirit Mountain board members and 7 out of the 11 DEC board members. Both are critical assets to the region. So that role of having board members or the authority to appoint board members is an important one. We do need to see both entities doing well. We do need to see both entities thriving. The DEC itself supports an entire region of hospitality. Spirit Mountain, of course, is a great opportunity for visitors to come to our community. You know, when I think of Spirit in particular, I look at the way we've been able to work on projects like the Lake Superior Zoo, Chester Ski Hill, other things in our community where it really is a great partnership with residents, where we might have the asset, but we have others that are in charge of taking on the management of that. And so, you know, Spirit in particular, there was an opportunity there, I think, to look at different management so that it was outside of the authority. That might also be an opportunity for us to look at how we continue forward with things like public golf within our community. So somehow it breaks out of the rack and stack of the city hierarchy and has an opportunity to be a little bit more entrepreneurial, to be a little bit more aggressive, to be a little bit more leading edge. But I think both are important assets, and we do want to continue to partner with them.
Mr. Reinert, thank you for your response. And Mayor Larson, your
Thank
thoughts?
you. Yes, thank you so much. First of all, Lester Golf, which was previously just mentioned, actually was taken out and managed separately. It does not work. It does not cash flow. Hope we get another question on that because I'm not going to spend more time on that now. Spirit Mountain is one of those projects that I am so proud of our work because it was not working when I took office. We established a mayor's task force, a plan. We now have a $24 million investment going into Spirit Mountain. We have Nordic Center there. We have a variety of things happening. That is because we embraced the reality of that challenge. We turned it around and we created a profit out of it. Something like the zoo, again, was slated for closure and not cash flowing and not doing well. It is an incredibly strong position now because of the work we are doing with that organization. Both of these things have happened in my tenure with community being tenacious about their values as well. And finally, the DEC is an asset that we have to protect. It is important to our whole region, and it is very notable that my opponent was the interim director just prior to the current director. The problems that we are seeing there are ones that could have been forecasted at the time. We're going to embrace the problem now. We're going to provide an infusion of cash if needed, and it has not been drawn down yet, to help meet facility needs, and we're going to continue to advocate, because the deck is a facility that is important, not just for entertainment, not just for hockey, but for our entire community, and it's a really important part of tourism, recreation, and visitors.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Reinert, your rebuttal.
Sure, thank you. You know, it has been, there are many things in this campaign that have been disappointing, but this new attack of my time of service at the deck, especially so, 11 months during the darkest days of the pandemic. When I was done with that, Mayor Larson was kind enough to send a note and thank me for that work, and thanked me for how I led and for the true partnership that we had as colleagues. And of course, that's not as politically expedient right now. When I came in, the deck had a $1.2 million budget reserve. When I left, it was 2.1 and approaching 3, including the Save Our Stages money, which landed 2 months later.
Thank you for that. And since we're talking about leadership, one of our viewers named Joseph, thank you, had submitted a question to us regarding leadership. So as mayor of Duluth, you both face tough decisions if one of you, whoever ends up in this position. What is your executive experience in leading an organization? And tell us about your leadership when there's so much to be done and limited resources and time.
Me first. Oh, great. Well, thank you for this question. I am thrilled to serve as your mayor for the last 8 years, and my commitment and my style of leadership is to hire people who are exceptional at what they do, to move out of their way, to give them what they need, and to let them shine. That is who I am. That is how I lead. If you are in a leadership meeting with me, everybody goes around the table. Everybody says what they think. I will always speak last. We will agree on a plan. We will open the door and move forward as a team. When something goes wrong in the city, I will take the heat, and it's not comfortable, and that's still the job. When something goes right, I will 100% move out of the way and give credit to other people. Now that has sometimes, people will tell me you should take more credit, you should do more of that. That's just not who I am. I show up as a leader with the energy that I have to be effective, to be efficient. I have a record, and unlike my opponent who is uncomfortable with accountability on a record, bring it on. This is what the work is. We are a democracy that demands accountability, and that is acceptable. When you ask for somebody's vote, it is deeply personal. You don't get to turn off whether someone has an opinion about it. So I am proud of the work and the leadership team that we have built, our record of success, how we're moving the community forward, how people are advancing, not just within the organization, but outside of it. And my executive experience is strong, it is clear, it is public, and I want you to hold me accountable for it.
Thank you, Mayor Larson. And Mr. Reiner, what is your response on that?
Thanks. I think some interesting comments there that I'm not sure based on what Duluth, thank you so much. We have had nearly 2,000 conversations, many of them an hour, many of them more than an hour. My door has been open to anyone that has been interested in meeting with me. You know, I feel fortunate to come to the role with a lot of experience, certainly prior elected experience, both at the local and the state level. Navy experience. I'm in my 19th year of service as a commander in the U.S. Navy Reserves. I'm second in command of our largest public affairs unit. Have had the opportunity to lead sailors and others in some really challenging circumstances like Afghanistan and the COVID pandemic in Italy when that was the global hotspot. And I've also had the opportunity to work with teams, of course, on the civilian side. And I'm so grateful to have the support of Duluth Fire. I'm so grateful to have the support of Duluth Police. And I would just note that neither one of us has been endorsed by AFSCME, which is the other largest organization representing current City Hall employees. So no one that represents our employees right now is asking for the current administration. So when we think about leadership, it is about building and recruiting talented teams. It's about supporting them. It's about collectively setting direction, accountability, and measurables. And then it is about protecting them so that they can do the work and you can take the arrows, which certainly come.
Thank you, Mr. Reinert. And Mayor Larson, your
yes,
rebuttal?
Thank you so much. Yes, I really appreciate that endorsements matter to my opponent when he wants to talk about those that he has, but somehow don't matter when other people want to talk about them. Thank you to the 17,000 workers in the AFL-CIO, the governor, Mayor Ness, Senators Klobuchar and Smith, workers across the spectrum for your support. But more importantly, I want to talk about leadership requires consistency. This is not about building a resume. This is not about short-term steps. Every leader, we are grateful for everything that they bring, but what 12,000 voters have told me at the door is that you want consistency and proof of record.
Thank you, Mayor Larson. And Mr. Reinert, this question will be directed at you. So we understand it's a difficult recruiting environment for the police and fire departments, something we were talking about just a second ago. So what can the city do to better support these entities?
Yeah. Really great question, and we're short in both Duluth Fire and we're short in Duluth Police at a time when we're really asking that team, the public safety team, to be engaged in doing hard work in our community. I'm grateful for the opportunity I've had to do ride-alongs with both police and fire, and again, incredibly grateful for their strong support in this election. You know, it really comes down to three things. It's competitive compensation. Thank you to the City Council who advocated for both the increase in the police salary as well as an increase in the fire salary. It is good benefits, and it is a great place to work. And so some of the things that we've seen happen in recent years have run counter to that. You know, there was a threat to benefits which caused over 300 years of experience in the Duluth Fire Department to walk out on the same day, December 31st, a couple years ago. When we do attract and hire new police and new fire, we have a tough time right now in hanging on to them. And we see some of those that we have skilled up go to other places where they're able to do more money and have a little more limited scope of work. So one of the things that the mayor can do in addition to the internal things is also just be a cheerleader and be an advocate and have their backs and be active in that recruitment process so that we can attract and retain and keep the staff that we need for the women and men that are out there serving us.
Thank you for sharing those thoughts. Mayor Larson?
Yes, thank you so much. So yes, we support our staff, and thank you to public workers. Whether you work for the city, the county, or some other entity, your work is really valuable, and what you do, especially at the City of Duluth, keeps people working and moving and getting about their day, and that is really important. What I have done in the past 8 years is support equipment purchasing when it's unpopular, especially when it's unpopular, because that's what our folks need. Supported the wage increases that were led by the City Council because that was what they wanted to do, and that's great. I could veto that. Why would I? You know, this is what we want and what we need to be doing. Conversely, I will share that my opponent in 2004 voted to cut a fire rig. And I think that's notable, and it's important to pay attention because that's also a downtown safety. That was a rig that serves downtown Lincoln Park. And so be careful about consistency of record and consistency of vote and consistency of presence and consistency of principle. Other things that we have done is we have expanded staff. We want to make sure that we are supporting public safety that is not just police related, right? If people have a mental health or chemical health need, we want community crisis response. We want our CERT team there. We are the first department in the United States to have a nurse on staff to help protect and serve people. We've added a city prosecutor so that we can continue to move forward on illegal behavior and fully prosecute. I advocated for a misdemeanor court, which just went into process earlier this spring. All of that supports the safety of our staff.
Thank you so much for that. Mr. Reinert, would you care to have rebuttal?
Sure. And maybe we'll get a chance to talk about this as well, but the city's finances 20 years ago were very different than the city's finances are today. And we don't have to go back that far to look at the impact of budget cuts to police and fire. Last spring, we had proposed across-the-board budget cuts that included public safety, both police and fire, and it took the council raising its voice and then an allocation of one-time ARPA funds in order to restore those cuts to one of our city priorities, and that's public safety.
Thank you for that. So our next question is regarding crime in the city. So many people feel there's a crime and safety problem in pockets of our community, especially downtown. What would you do to make downtown safer for citizens?
Great.
Start with you.
Me first? Okay, great. Thank you for the question. Thank you. We want everybody to feel safe in this community, whether you live downtown or in a neighborhood. I live in the hillside. I want my neighbors to feel as safe as you and yours in whatever neighborhood you live in. I convened a downtown task force that started last year and finished their work this year. We made 27 recommendations. 24 of them are underway. We are doing what cities across the country are now just starting to do, which is actually have a conversation about how to activate downtown. When you have an empty downtown, our downtown used to have 18,000, 19,000 workers workers a day. We now have 8,000 to 9,000 workers a day. You have a lot of empty space. We have to fill that up. We've done a housing study, and we have predicted 2,200 units of housing to go in downtown. We've made one announcement already to flip the Ordine building from office into housing. We're working on a First Street development, which is going to have 300 units of housing. When we fill spaces with positive behavior, that's one important way to do that. Citywide crime is down 22%. And when we talk about downtown, we have calls for service up, but actually crime going down. Calls for service are good. That means you're letting us know that you want us to be there, and that means we're also doing some proactive work. We've also invested in the clean and safe outreach model to make sure that people are getting greater street outreach. And invested in the parking ramps, both lighting and security. So the idea of downtown being the vibrant place that we know it is and will be again, we're on the path there.
Thank you so much for that. And Mr. Reinert, your response.
Thanks. It's such an important question. I mean, public safety is something that's on the minds of many Duluthians. And the perception, again, is reality. It's the experience that many have in our community. And we have to also look at the full spectrum of statistics, and also I would just say the individual experiences. You know, we had an incident of gun violence last summer where an individual was killed, and we had homes in West Duluth that had random bullet holes. I mean, that affects people's idea of public safety and how they feel living in their neighborhood. The FBI statistics show us that in 2016 we had 312 violent crimes. Last year we had 318. So we're still sort of in that same place. When we think specifically of downtown, more people downtown is the key to that, and housing downtown is also the key to that. So how we can reuse the buildings that we have downtown that right now have excess space, largely commercial space, make that retail space, make that commercial space, and also residential space. We have to address cleanliness and safety issues with our downtown. But because of, frankly, the housing situation we have, it's also a great motivator or incentive for housing to happen downtown, which will then give us people, and people give us eyes on things. People also give us retail. They give us bookstores and coffee shops and restaurants and the things that you like to see. You know, in Minneapolis, the fastest growing neighborhood is downtown Minneapolis.
Thank you so much for that. And Mayor Larson, your rebuttal?
Yes, thank you so much. So here's what I'm eager about for our downtown. We have a $1 billion hospital, which has a medical district that has $100 million of public investment in there because we advocated for it. On the other end, we have the NLX train coming in. Again, years of advocating. In between, a street that has $50 million of investment made possible by my work and that of this community. And along the way, the North Shore Theater, the Minnesota Power Plaza, projects underway at the library and the Ordine building. We are on a very important, strong path.
Thank you for your thoughts on that. While we've talked a little bit about the vibrancy of Duluth, one thing that we've been discussing here at PBS are the root causes. So what do you see as the root causes, and how would you address them? Mr. Reinert, would you like to start?
Well, I think we have a couple things. Number one, it has to do around population and population growth. When we add new people, we add new ideas, we add new energy. Number two, it has to do with the environment that we have, especially around entrepreneurs and their ability to take new ideas and bring them to life. And implement them within our community. You know, one of our near neighbors, Superior, is just doing a really great job with this. I mean, you go down Tower Avenue and look at new businesses that are starting. They're attractive, they're fun. You want to spend there, you want to stay there, you want to hang out, you want to shop. Number three, it has to do with where are the secondary and tertiary opportunities related to the existing core industries that we already have. Things like transportation, higher education, medical, engineering, and tourism, of course. And where are those additional business opportunities that we can grow into and out from? But when we back up, we come back to something that we started the conversation with, and that's housing. You know, when we want to grow those businesses and add more dynamicism to our community, we also have to have the workers that can help grow those businesses, and those workers need to have homes. So we start with those easy opportunities for us to connect to our existing core industries, but then we also really focus on the mid-market housing that's lacking right now so that people can say, yes, I want to be in Duluth. Yes, here's a great job. I want to bring my energy and ideas there, and I can also find a home and build a home there.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. Mayor Larson, let's hear yours.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm really proud of as a community is what we're seeing for growth in the neighborhood of Lincoln Park. Here's a great example of a neighborhood that I prioritized along with the community. And part of what we did is give money and ideas and some ability for people to purchase buildings and do storefront work. Then we moved out of the way to let them be exceptional at creating their business idea. We've infused housing into that. We've infused transportation. We now have a $25 million raise grant going into that community and exceptional climate a climate forward plan that is looking at geothermal and looking at using waste collection from WLSSD to heat that neighborhood. That is important. That is a neighborhood with a vision. On top of that, a park process that has $4.5 million into the Lincoln Park. $1 million of that is a National Park Service grant. What we do as a community is we create a sense of place and space that people want to be. We do that by making sure that people feel seen and heard, that they have places to go, that parks are invested in. This is all a part of where we are moving as a community. Some of this work is well underway. Some of it we have more work to do on, but we are prioritizing the needs of residents. We are listening with residents. The plans that we are enacting still to this day are based on the hundreds of people who impacted our comprehensive plan, Imagine Duluth 2035. When I first took office, that is still the vision today. There is a distinct difference between talking about projects and ideas and having a cohesive vision around which we move an entire community forward.
Thank you for your thoughts on that. Mr. Reinert, your rebuttal?
Sure. I would just add, I think one of the great opportunities is once folks are here to help them really feel engaged, to really feel invested in our community. You know, a great example, we both had the opportunity to meet earlier with the Softball Association that represents Duluth, and they talked about how they've invested themselves over $100,000 into the fields that their kids play on, especially their female athletes. We hear similar things from hockey. We hear similar things from folks in Duluth Heights who don't want to lose that community club and just waiting for the city to say, yes, help, we want you to be engaged.
Thank you so much. Mayor Larson, this question will start with you, and I've got a slightly different question for you, Mr. Reinert. So Mayor Larson, we understand that you've prepared the budget for 2024. What are your main priorities, and what are the differences between the previous year?
Oh, great question. Well, it's a very exciting budget, actually. Taxation is something, and the general fund budget is something I take really seriously. I pay these same taxes that you do. 27 cents of your tax dollar goes to support the city of Duluth, and I am happy to talk about that 27 cents anytime. LGA, local government aid, is something that I have fought for with this community for 8 straight years. We finally got the most meaningful increase that will radically change our budget, $4.4 million allocated to us annually. It had been fairly stagnant for 20 years, placing undue responsibility for our services on property taxpayers. There's no question about that. Governor Walz will absolutely echo that, who is supporting me in this race and knows both of us. Conversely, I will share that my opponent during his time in office, and he'll talk about my taxes, and I'll get a chance to come back to that, raised and supported property tax budget of a 52% increase in your property taxes, and initiated a $5 streetlight fee, which took me 6 years to undo, and took other city services out of the budget. So pay attention to a record and what you're getting for that. This budget prioritizes our organization. It invests in staff. It gets 20 miles of street done. And it invests in downtown safety. So I'm going to get a chance to come back and rebuttal, and I'll save the rest of my comments for then.
Thank you so much for that. And so, Mr. Reinert, the question for you would be, how would your budget differ from what she has proposed?
Well, I mean, some of the things that you really need to look at with our current city budget is focusing on those core city services. And it is, where do we invest our time and where do we invest our energy? Streets, utilities, public safety, our neighborhood parks, and our community centers. And you look at the ability we have to deliver on those things, and folks just don't think that we're delivering on them well. So one of the first things that I will do in office is look at my leadership team and set that leadership team. Once the leadership team is set, we're going to look at the department structure. And the department structure matters because that's what informs the budget. And as one of the council candidates said, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And we have to actually have that conversation of what is the organizational structure within City Hall so that we can look at what those deliverables are. Those deliverables then drive the resources needed. And homeowners, you've seen it in your property taxes. We've gone from an $80 million general fund to a proposed $108 million general fund next year. So resources is not the issue. And we also have a healthy budget reserve. We also have a healthy community trust fund. And again, we received $58 million in ARPA funds, more than every other city in Minnesota combined, except for Minneapolis and St. Paul. So resources right now are not the issue. It is saying these are going to be our priorities, and this is where we're going to spend our resources: streets, utilities, and public safety.
Thank you for sharing those views. And Mayor Larson, your rebuttal.
Yes, this is where short-term political magical thinking comes in. 2 of every $3 of our city budget already goes to public safety. So the question is how and where, not how will you start thinking about it, but specifically, where do those cuts come from? Do they come from libraries or parks? Do they come from people reviewing plans and permits? They're going to come from somewhere, so let's be honest about that. And there's a difference in the ARP funds between money that is uncommitted and money that is encumbered, and I would hope I get another chance to talk about that.
Thank you so much. And just a heads up, candidates, we're moving to 60-second responses, and then we're going to finish out the rest of the time today. So just wanted to give you a heads up. So Mr. Reinert, despite efforts to increase road repairs and reconstruction, we've still heard from viewers that they're disappointed in the state of the city's streets. How would you recommend fixing that?
Sure. We have to do a couple really straightforward things. Number one, we have to look at our street system. First of all, let's just acknowledge the streets are not in great shape. We have to look at the streets as an entire system, and we look at where is it that we have streets that are in great shape, streets that are in good shape, streets that are in bad shape. And then we also share that information with homeowners. As I've made house visits, I've had homeowners that are very concerned about their streets, and I've been able to say, relatively, it's actually in pretty good shape. Number two, we continue to do the work that we're doing with the half-cent sales tax. That's getting us from the 2 that the mayor will mention to the 19 that we're doing this year, 20 next year, but then we fall back down to 14.9, 14.7. One of our key partners, St. Louis County, takes the same half-cent sales tax and bonds against it. They built $68 million of new streets in 3 years, and now they primarily spend that time maintaining what they have instead of constructing, and they said that's the key to getting over the hill.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And Mayor Larson.
Bonding is reckless. It is what got us into this place in the first place, and my opponent should know that, because he served on council at a time where he approved 1 mile of road a year. The next year he approved 2 miles of road a year. The 0.5% sales tax is game-changing, but wasting that and betting that on bonding, that is risky. That will absolutely set us back. I just heard that the county build roads, but now they're just maintaining them. They're not even building more than with that money. This is not the sales job that actually gets streets done. In 2006, my opponent cut heavy equipment operators. When he left office, 1/3 of the streets crew was gone. I have grown our streets crew. We have invested. We have grown streets 850%. We are also doing lead lines and utility work. This year we had 30 seasonal workers. We got every single primary and secondary road patched across the city. That hasn't happened in decades. We want more. We deserve more. We're on the path for more.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Reinert, your
Sure.
follow-up.
Thanks. Folks, again, the financial situation of the city today, we just went through those finances, is not what it was 20 years ago. I wish I had the time to read a great comment from then Councilor Charlotte Gardner, who served on the council with me, drawing that comparison. And frankly, it should not be embarrassing, or it should not be a shame that we talk to others who have the opportunity to do good work. Folks, go anywhere in Duluth where a city street and a county street meets, and you'll see that night and day difference. And if bonding is terrible, then I'm assuming we're not making any bonding requests in the upcoming session.
Thank you. And last question for you both tonight. With colder weather on the way, we want to talk about winter. So residents are still sharing that they're waiting days to have their street or alley plowed following a major snow event. So Mayor Larson, let's start with you. What do you attribute this to, and what can be done to help clear streets more quickly?
Great. Thank you for the question. Again, I'm going to start with, you're right, our budget is in a much better position than it was 10 and 20 years ago, because of the hard work we've done to get it there. So why go back and risk it on strategies that would only pull us back into an era that risks our AA bond rating, our nationally recognized finance team? But on to snow. I have built our team back up from the numbers at which they were when my opponent left local government the last time he was there. We have got equipment that we are buying with this new budget. And this budget actually invests in equipment, it invests in street crew, and we have a snow emergency system that I'm sure my opponent will talk about that I put into place. It is intended to help us move quickly through a snow event. It's much easier when blizzards don't happen on Sunday nights when everybody has to change, which was a big part of our record winter last year. I want to first of all thank our city staff who are amazing and put in 80-hour weeks to help clear our snow so we can all keep moving.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Reinert.
Great, thank you. So a timely question, literally, because as I came to the studio, I checked my mail, got the latest attack mailer, and then also got the snow emergency pamphlet that came in the mail. You know, a snow emergency is a great tool. It's something that I advocated for and actually drafted when I was on council the first time. I wish we would have used it last winter, the snowiest winter that we ever had. And one of the challenges that our plow crews have is that when we don't partner, when we don't participate, when we don't help move vehicles, it makes their job that much more difficult. So as we look at winter being just around the corner, in fact, it's snowing tonight in northwestern Minnesota. I don't think it's quite going to make it here. It is incredibly timely. But I would also add that what is underneath the snow matters. So when you look at the condition of the street that the plows are then going to drive on, those potholes that got filled this summer, many of which have come unfilled as we approach winter, are going to lead to more asphalt being taken up when the water and the ice adheres to the snow that's being plowed.
Thank you so much. And Mayor Larson, your rebuttal?
Yeah, this is where I do want to bring up the tagline that my opponent uses, which is expect more and do better, and how offensive it is to city staff, and here's why. You don't use that phrase with people you want to build power with and do things with. What you say to them is, how can I help? You don't say, I expected more and you need to do better to the plow driver who's been out for 80 hours, or the water treatment plant worker who practically slept at the plant during the pandemic. You offer the resources, you staff them, you get the equipment, you move out of the way so they can be effective.
All right, you two, let's transition to closing statements. Mr. Reinert, you have the floor.
Sure. Great, thank you. Well, thank you, WDSC, for hosting tonight. I hope you paid attention to what you heard tonight and also what you didn't. I won't tell you I'm the best, and perhaps just as importantly, that someone else is not. You did not even hear me use the word opponent. It's inherently divisive, and this election has never been personal. How we choose to campaign matters, and in these closing days, I ask you to reflect on that. We can choose to add civility to our community or detract from it. We can behave in ways that encourage others to consider serving or make them ask, why would I ever put myself through that? Mayor Larson has repeatedly said, pay attention, the details matter, and the choice is clear. I agree. 6 attack mailers and counting. Early today, there was a radio story that ran in which Mayor Larson said her campaign has nothing to do with these mailers. Yet, we get the ones that say prepared and paid for by Emily Larson for mayor. For the first time ever, we've seen the DC playbook applied to one of our local races, mailers, websites, social media ads, words like risky, dangerous, and trust, intended to mislead and to make you afraid. If you're still undecided in this race, I invite you to make your decision based on that alone. Say no to these tactics. The ends don't justify the means, and if they work in this race, we will see them from now on. Still worse, they serve to discourage qualified candidates from running. We need more meaningful choice, not less. Duluth, you've had the opportunity to see my public service for nearly 20 years, a deep commitment to our city, to our state, to our country. You've also had the opportunity to see how I do the work, thoughtful, approachable, hands-on. The ability to gather diverse stakeholders and develop practical solutions. Over the past 10 months, we've had thousands of conversations with everyday Duluthians, and the choice is clear. If you think Duluth is headed in the right direction, then vote for a third term. But if you expect more, if you think we can do better, if you have concerns, then join your friends and neighbors in voting for something different on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you so much for leading our closing. And Mayor Larson, let's have you finish.
Thank you so much. Yes, tonight was really important. This is the last time my opponent and I will be in the same room debating with and for this community on the issues that really matter, every single day. We are genuinely different and distinctive people, and I hope you've seen that. I have a record that I am proud of. My opponent has one too. And I expect in this vibrant democracy that you would hold us equally accountable for all of who we are. What we need at this moment is a mayor who sees not just the genuine hurt and grievance of the now, but also carries the hope of a collective vision to pull us all through, and that is what I bring. Since January, my team and I have door-knocked 12,000 homes across the city. We've talked with thousands of people. You've been sharing with me your ideas and your concerns, your hopes and your dreams, and all of it is important. Because despite the many incredible successes we've discussed, we still face serious challenges, and I share your impatience and your urgency for more. This next term, it is about continuing our work on streets and public safety, but it's also about revitalizing our downtown. It's about doubling down on housing. It's about a 10-year parks plan and a vision for the library. It's about getting the lead out of your private water line and expanding childcare solutions so you can support your family. It's about continuing to invest in ways that make every neighborhood ones of choice and opportunity, and it is about getting as many people through each day and each week as whole and as healthy as possible. Your vote is important and it's precious. You're voting not just for someone you can work with, but someone who you believe in. We have this chance now to keep our momentum going and growing, or we risk moving backwards. My name is Emily Larson, and I once again ask for your vote and for your support, because our work together isn't done yet. Thank you.
Thank you both. And that is our time for tonight's Forum in the Northland, featuring the candidates for Duluth Mayor. I would like to thank candidates Roger Reinert and Emily Larson for sharing your thoughts tonight and your time. And for viewers, now that you've heard from the candidates, it's time to do your part. Get out and vote for your candidate of choice on Tuesday, November 7th. And if you missed any part of this program or want to re-watch it, you'll find the full forum on our website, pbsnorth.org. For Forum producer Greg Grell, director Nick Stoltman, and the rest of the team here at PBS North, I'm Kelsey Roseth. Good night.